Recovery is stupendous.
Achievable.
Hope.
Freedom.
Empowering.
It's unique to everyone.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Getting a new lease on life.
It's finding restoration after you fall down.
Recovery is having the freedom to enjoy life.
For me, it was finding a way to really love myself.
My recovery is possible in part because of my own sense of purpose.
Welcome to Montana's Peer Network Recovery Talks podcast. I'm Jim Haney.
And I'm Rhea Wetzel.
And today we have a very, very special guest.
Wow, thank you for two berries. My name is Chris May, and I am so happy to be here today. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed addictions counselor, and I also do some supervision for peer supporters.
Excellent.
Like me.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things.
Well, Christy, we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. This is February, and we always focus on relationships this month. And you didn't know that?
I didn't put that together. Yeah, no, it's perfect.
That was why really we reached out. We wanted you to come on for this month. We always talk about recovery and relationships. I think Lee and I, we've done a couple now, talk about our experiences, right?
Right.
And the one we got into a really good conversation about relationships we had to let go of in recovery. That was a really good topic. And
yes.
in the past, we've always brought people on to talk about like their relationship experience, but we've never had a counselor on. I don't think ever in the history of MPN podcasts, I don't think we've ever had a counselor on. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in. So, yeah. All right, Leah, I think you got some questions lined up for.
Yes, I do. Yes, I'm very honored to have Christy May with us as well. She's my clinical and become one of my biggest supporters. And so when the subject came up, I thought, let's reach out to her because she's somebody that I use for a sounding board personally, and I take her words as gold. And so we're gonna get right to it. So there's all this big talk and these conversations about narcissism. I thought I'd ask you, what exactly is a narcissist?
That is a great question. I'm glad we're leading off with that question. There is actually in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is kind of the clinical diagnosing of somebody, which is not what we're doing today, but there is a personality disorder that falls under the name of narcissistic personality disorder. That actually only affects less than 1% of the population. It's very rare, it's not very studied and very well researched. So it's probably not likely that we're going to be talking about something as rigid as that, right? But some of the traits of narcissism, you might find those showing up in probably all relationships to some extent, but it's when they become kind of these deeper patterns that are inflexible is where it can be really, really difficult, and maybe we would label it as toxic or unhealthy. So there's three, and actually made a few notes here. There's three actual kind of patterns with someone who has those traits, and that is grandiosity. Grandiosity means I'm kind of filtering myself on the top all the time, right? So maybe I'm making myself greater in my mind or bigger than I really am. I always need to feel very important and special, and I might exaggerate my accomplishments. So again, we all might have narcissistic traits, right? Or I'm over here going, oh, sometimes I've done that before, right? So Also, the need for admiration is very great, like believing that others are always jealous of me. They always want to be like me. If I have something everybody wants. I might be a very jealous person if I was a narcissist. And I would say the biggest one that we're probably going to talk about today is lack of empathy. So inability to really understand or put myself in another person's experience. There are some other causes, so it's not just like a personality disorder and someone's inherently flawed, right? Some of these traits I see, or these ways of thinking, come out for other reasons. Substance use sometimes, right? Someone's either under influence, or there's like, you guys know this, but there's thinking errors that go along with justifying using. Someone who's actively, or maybe hasn't recovered that part of themselves yet. And trauma, actually. I think about like kids who sort of had to survive on their own in a family of, whatever's going on, and you become very sort of self-sufficient. And that person might kind of lack empathy because they may not have learned yet how to think about other people. Their just survival has been based on just meeting their own needs. So they might kind of withdrawn and they meet their own needs. So, and that can present as narcissistic in really intimate relationships. So I think I just wanted to bring those things up because that's probably way more common of what we're going to be talking about today.
And Christy, how do you, so as you describe those, I'm thinking, people I've peer supported, people I know. How do you differentiate that from mania? Somebody has bipolar and they're in mania. You describe 3 traits that you can often see in someone who's in a state. Yeah.
They could be in mania. They could be having a psychotic episode. They could be under the influence of substance. They could be, there's a lot of mental health things that could be going on as well as under the influence. And so I think that probably, I'm not sure for the purpose of this podcast, right? We're probably not going to be diagnosing people. What I really want to talk about is, what do we do, right? If I'm in a relationship with someone who's displaying those traits, they might have, so you're asking me, how do I figure out, what if they're mentally ill?
Right. That's exactly.
Yeah. So I think that if I was in a relationship where I had flags, which I hope we're going to talk about those, that I would really maybe set some boundaries or be strongly encouraging that person to work on those things, right? So someone who has a mental health issue that's presenting in this way, it's interfering in our relationship. I would just hope they would be working on it. I might even require it to stay in the relationship with that person.
Wow. Okay, so for our listeners that are sitting there checking these boxes or not, to what extent is this obviously unhealthy, and where's their possibilities? Like you said, you might want them to stay in a relationship and work on things. To what extent should we be allowing these things in our lives or within our own selves?
Yeah, that's a good one. We could go all day on that one, Leah, right? A couple of things I want to respond to that. And there's so many things I could say, but I remember years ago, my therapist telling me a healthy relationship is when you and your partner know each other's triggers. And as soon as you're upset with each other, you don't immediately go for it. You don't immediately go right in for their hot button. You actually are there's a protective quality to that. Like, right? If I know that maybe my partner's been cheated on before and he's mad at me, I'm not going to turn around with my phone and say, oh, guess what? My ex-boyfriend just texted me, right? I'm not going to go into his most vulnerable place. I'm going to protect that. Even if we're upset with each other. Yeah, so that is that was like a new thing for me to take in, right? That's a big Might be a different way of being in a relationship.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah. So
Right.
other things are like if someone that, your needs, I printed out this personal bill of rights. If you Google personal bill of rights, it will come up. But it's
Okay.
something to hang it in front of your toilet. It's a couple of them, but they are really great for like outlining, so that we don't get eclipsed in relationships, our rights. I have a right to ask for what I want. Just that one, right? That's number one. I have a right to ask for what I want. I have a right to make mistakes and not be perfect. I have the right to say no to requests, to demands I can't meet. So just like those, that's just a little example, but those I think are all signs that if you have the space to do those things in your relationship, it sounds like it's probably on the healthier side, right? This is a spectrum. There's no like, I've achieved healthy relationship. We don't just like jump from one to the next. It's just kind of, we are striving to make things better for us and our partner.
It's something we're working towards, right? Because some of us, we never knew what boundaries were until we started learning about recovery and gaining support, and so baby steps, huh?
Yeah, and I think this personal bill of rights, if you're not sure about boundaries, it's a good place to start. To feel, because I think a lot of times we don't feel that we have the right to ask for what we need. We don't even have feel the right to have a need sometimes, right? And so I guess if you're in a relationship where you don't have the right to have any needs, I would say that would be a flag.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what are some examples of quote unquote a healthy relationship? I know we've spoke about some of those, but maybe what are some good examples of, because I know I've been that person that I pushed away anything good in my life when I was unhealthy, and I didn't know how to accept it. And so maybe having like a little checklist of what are some good things to look for, some good qualities in somebody.
Yeah. That's a great question. And I didn't completely answer the last one either, so maybe I can with this one. But some good qualities. Well, first of all, I would say that having healthy friendships is very important. Healthy relationships and friendships and where you can. So I want to it starts with the health of all of our relationships, like as the onion skin, right? The onion layers, right? We have the deepest innermost layer where we have maybe our immediate family and our intimate partner, and then we go out from like our super close friends, and then we just keep going out with these layers. And so looking at your layers, making sure people are in the appropriate ring. Sometimes I have someone who's wanting to get into my closest ring that shouldn't be there. Or maybe I'm keeping someone out that needs to be there, right? So we're kind of looking at it that way, but also just looking at improving the health of our relationships. And then again, this personal bill of rights is a way to kind of feel like we're taking up our space in the relationship. Friendships need to have some kind of a transactional quality, right? So I'm getting what I give what I get. There's sort of, it's not always like we're keeping a ledger. If Jim's my friend and we've been friends for a long, long time and he's having a hard time, there might be times that he's taken up more space in the relationship, the friendship. And then there might be times when I'm struggling and I'm like, dude, I just need to download this,
Right.
But there's sort of a balance. So I have needs, my needs are getting met. The other person has needs and their needs are getting met without demands or disrespect.
Sounds like some old indigenous belief systems too. We believe that to have balance and harmony, there has to be a male and a female aspect to it. So trusting enough to be able to feel out each other's boundaries, balancing out the relationship.
The other thing is oftentimes I think we don't know our own needs.
Yes.
We have suppressed them, dissociated from them, not allowed them for whatever reason, been scared by them. And so if you are in that place, then your work is to figure that out, figure out what your needs are. And you will very quickly begin to know, like your body, you'll have like an internal feeling of someone just ran over my boundary, right? Or I need to put a boundary here because I'm pissed off and I don't even really know why. So I might, anger is such a great gauge. If you feel angry, a lot of times it's so overwhelming that we can get disoriented by it. And so if you're feeling angry a lot of the time, anger is a sign that we need to establish safety. So physical safety, like run from that car, run from this, whatever. Establish a safety, make a change, and or set a boundary. Those are the three things that I have seen that are really productive places that we can put that energy. And so if you're physically safe, then the other two are like, do I need to set a boundary here? How do I like own this anger so that I'm not resentful? How do I use this energy to set? So if you are angry, finding yourself angry with a person, hopefully you can, set a boundary. Like, Leah, this is an example. I might say, Leah, I can't get calls after 9:00 at night. I go to bed, I put my kids to bed. So if you need to talk to me, shoot me an email in the middle of the night or call me after 8:00 in the morning or before 8 p.m. That might be a boundary that I set with you instead of being angry and picking up the phone at 10 over and over and then being like irritable with you. And then I go to bed angry.
Right.
So,
and everything you just said, you're explaining urges and feelings that I started getting when I started learning more about myself. When I started learning, what is it that I like? What is it I don't like? What is it that I'm passionate about? What is it I love doing? And because I never knew what boundaries were before. And there is like this inner turmoil or sting you feel when that does get ran over.
yes. And I think we have to learn to trust that, right? So
Hey.
a boundary, there's no list of healthy boundaries. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And like you asked me earlier, how do we know if we're in this relationship, if we're allowing things, And my answer to that is you got to figure out what's okay and not okay for you. Period. This is not okay. For some reason, my body's having a response. I'm not okay. It's not okay. And you will know. If you can get in touch with yourself, you'll know. And I tell people all the time when they're like, oh, I don't know if I should stay in this relationship. It doesn't matter what I think. You'll know when you've had enough. It will become clear. It really will.
Love ourselves enough to follow through and not continue to keep taking it.
Get support.
I'm just taking it all in. I'm just processing everything Christy's sharing with us. I think it's, some great information, a lot of information. You hit on we could split this into 3 podcasts, I think. I think there's just a lot there for people to take in and process, think about. And yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate the insight. It's great.
It's been great to have you on here, Christy. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us? I find what you have to share so valuable for me personally that I couldn't wait to get you on here and share with the rest of the world.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. My Psychology Today profile is very simple, but one of the things I said on there is I work well with codependency, setting boundaries, relationships, and that's a lot of the calls that I get. I think this is a really pertinent topic because like I said, there's no manual. There's no, I can't sit down with someone and say, this is what you need to do, right? It's kind of our own personal work. It's our personal work. So I guess what I would leave it with is that we can only look at what's in our control, right? Our partner, if they have narcissistic traits or whatever, like we've identified some of those, if they're not empathetic, they can't receive feedback from you, you feel like you're being manipulated, you're angry and you don't know why, you're probably being manipulated, right? So if you have some of those feelings, we can make requests of our partner, but they are not in our control. That's really hard. Like, I don't have a crystal ball where someone comes in and I could say like, okay, let's make them do this, right? I always say my magic wand is broken right now. So how do we take control of what we can do? And that's where the boundaries come in, right? We decide like, we don't want to get so angry and so bitter that we just put up a brick wall around our heart, never let anybody in, right? So we have to kind of work on and get support with just kind of maybe setting a boundary that is appropriate for the situation, appropriate for the person and ourselves. And I believe that we have our own answers when it comes to that.
I love that. And it's every day, right? Like, some of the most people to me that are the wisest are the ones that are so humble and are just like, we never will get to a point where we have the answer, but we have to continue to work on ourselves daily.
Absolutely. Daily.
We have good days and bad days, but we won't be taking that out on our loved ones. We got to put that energy in to work hard to make sure that there's a balance, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Christy. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you, Christy. It was great.
Thanks for having me.
I want to make this kind of a ongoing thing with you.
Yeah. If we have different topics, can we call you and bring you back on?
Absolutely.
I think that would be great. You could be like our special guest.
It's not special if I'm on all the time, but it would still be fun.
We'll work in.
You're special.
So, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. And you have a website, or how would somebody get in touch with you?
I'm on Psychology Today, but I do recommend that people call, because there's been a few instances recently where I've gotten emails, because you can email also. And when I send an email back, I think it goes to their spam box and they think I'm not responding. So call.
Okay.
Today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to another episode of Recovery Talks. Each week we have another podcast, different topics, and we thank you for tuning in.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works, recovery is possible.
Recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery works and recovery is possible.
Recovery is possible.